Considering yesterday was Thanksgiving, I think the timing is apropos to talk a bit about the history of Thanksgiving and socialism. How are these things intertwined? You may ask yourself. Quite a perplexing statement to make, right? I will explain some of the history of the Mayflower, and then I will show you the parallels to today's society and what it means. Think about this. The colonies originally were properties of the British Empire. Typically, you would have settlers, people who are looking for commercial or religious opportunities. I have a video about this on my channel, about the colonies. I'll just surmise it. They would go over to this new land. Poor, broke. What you need is you needed a sponsor. In the early 17th century, you had King James I. He created a joint stock company with private investors. This company was called the Virginia Company of London. This company would manage the establishment of future colonial settlements in North America. Here's the thing, if you wanted to settle and leave England for the New World, you had to get a license from the government, and you needed a land patent from the Virginia Company. You also needed to raise money from investors. If you're poor, if you're not a person of affluence, you needed to gain funds from private investors. Joint capitalist is what they are referred to now. It's similar to the people on Shark Tank. Somebody will sell a product like socks, and one of the sharks will pay 20,000, let's say, hypothetically speaking, for 15% of the company. That is similar to what would happen in the past. They would fund the voyage and the establishment of the new colonies. The way these contracts basically worked out is that the investor wanted to receive a percentage of the production in the future colonies. They wanted to return a handsome profit. The Pilgrims signed a contract with about 70 venture capitalists. The most famous is Thomas Watson. The stipulations of the deal is that everything the colonists produced would belong to a commonwealth. At the end of 7 years, they would equally divide everything between the investors and the colonists. It was all equality. The deal forbade that the colonists could work on their own private business, on their own private property, because the investors wanted all the funds to come back to them for their investment. The hardship that these people really faced is astonishing. Imagine being enclosed on a small ship. Now, I remember back when my brother and sister were living in the same area as me, we used to all scrunch in the back of the car for about an hour trip, 2-hour trip. It was awful. Having 3 grown adults in the back of a car in close quarters. But could you imagine a voyage on a ship, a merchant ship, a small boat of 102 people? The disease, the body odor, this is before deodorant. 102 people smashed together. Out of that 102 people, only 44 people made it. One of the notable members that deceased was William Bradford's wife on the voyage. You now have these lazy millennials and these lazy academics who have never produced anything in their life criticizing, delegitimizing not only capitalism, which is more ideological, but also these settlers who risked hardship, who risked disease. Could you imagine leaving your stable job to travel to a place you've never been with no economic development, no fertile land, and no promise of success? Would you do that? Could you imagine that? Leaving everything you know with a group of people that you don't even 100% know, with your family. Of course, most of us wouldn't, right? These loser millennials with their air conditioning and their Starbucks lattes on their cell phones criticize these people who they aren't even worthy of mentioning in the same breath. Just a little rant, but it is the case. All of the modern amenities that we possess have made us soft, spoiled little punks, myself included. I'm not immune from that. But back to the main issue. When pilgrims, the colonists, whatever you want to refer to them as, the settlers, got to Plymouth, there was a lot of fighting amongst the Native American tribes. The multiculturalists portray a false version of history. They portray the natives as one unified tribe or a group of unified tribes that are all living in harmony with nature, with the sun, with the rabbits on the land. But the truth of the matter is, you had many tribes who were fighting amongst one another. That's where Squanto came in. Squanto was originally a slave, but he had, I think it was a Catholic priest that freed him. Squanto negotiated peace amongst the tribes. The natives taught the colonists how to work on the land, how to plant corn, how to work on the soil. Even with the help of the Native Americans, whose contributions made it possible. Without the Native Americans, there would not be an America. Don't misunderstand me. Squanto is as important as George Washington and Benjamin Franklin in my book. He's a hero. But even with the natives helping them, the colonists struggled to produce anything. Now, why is that? Although socialism as an ideology and as a school of thought was not invented, the word socialism did not exist. The way that the society operated at Plymouth Rock was similar to a socialist society. It really resembled it. Since the investors that were in England demanded that the colonists operate communally, collectivism is the best term to use now, everything was owned by every colonist jointly. Everybody owned one piece of stock in that company. No matter if you planted 1,000 crops or one crop, no matter how much you produced, you would still own the same amount of wealth. That's what the liberals tell you today. Everybody, no matter your education, no matter how many hours you work, no matter how much you produce for society, no matter how many jobs you create, everyone should pay their fair share and everyone should make equal money, even though Jeff Bezos produces trillions of dollars in wealth. He hires millions of people, and the amount of economic productivity from the drivers to the stockers to the postal workers, the amount of money that he generates for the economy versus somebody who works, and I'm not trying to say this person's bad, there's nothing wrong with this, but a person that is a cash register, how much wealth do they produce versus Bezos? How many hours do they work? How much money have they invested, etc., etc.? I hate Jeff Bezos, by the way, but I'm just being fair. I'm not a communist or socialist. He's earned what he's got, whether you like the guy or not. But the reason he makes more is because he produces more. Now, if you're going to tell Jeff Bezos, we're going to take 90 cents of every dollar you make, what would be the incentive for Bezos to invest in new equipment, new development, hire new workers, take risk? If you're going to take all of his money away, what would be the point? Nothing, right? I remember Ronald Reagan told a story that when he was in Hollywood, they started taxing him 90 cents for every dollar he made. The more hours you work, the more taxes you're going to pay. What's the purpose, right? That's what happened to the colonies. Nobody was incentivized to produce anything. And since they were forbidden to work on their own land or their own private business, a lot of them had resentment because whatever they produced went into a common pot and it was divided equally amongst all the people, which meant everyone was not pulling the same weight. The colony was constantly running out of food. You always hear in school that there was a rough winter where a lot of the colonists died. Of course, disease, immune systems not being adapted to the environment, and a lot of factors cause this. But at the same time, when you don't have food, you can't live. Due to this, that led to a lot of deaths that could have been prevented. In 1626, the settlers were not able to return sufficient profits to the investors in England. So they had to restructure the debt that they borrowed. They had sort of a town hall meeting amongst the governor, William Bradford, and the people. William Bradford and his advisors decided to try something new. After a long debate, this is in William Bradford's book, by the way, this isn't me saying this. He stated that they should set corn every man for his own particular, and assign to every family a parcel of land according to the proportion of their number. So William Bradford said every man should be responsible for his own crops, and according to the proportion of the size of the family, they would be given a plot of land. Everybody would start off on the same footing. In his book, he also states that after he put in this new proposal, that people were willing to work. People were willing to go to the fields. The man and the fathers worked in the fields, and the mothers would also be willing to bring their young kids to help work on the crops. After this, you had a large abundance of food. This is how you went from starvation, a lot of deaths, to the Thanksgiving dinner. Because of capitalism, because of Squanto and the natives, because of a large amount of factors, because of the new allocation of resources, to celebrate what the Lord had blessed them with, you had a large Thanksgiving dinner. Now, a few things about this. I never learned that in school. Did you? Kind of interesting how in school they don't teach you about this. They never tell you about this. But they treat FDR like he is Jesus reincarnated, like he is a Greek god, even though he was a socialist. But yet you never hear about William Bradford. You never hear about Ronald Reagan. It kind of seems like they're doing that on purpose. Right? This last election would have not been possible if the school system would actually do their job, if we would learn about socialism versus capitalism. I'm not saying that We have to be indoctrinated that capitalism is better. All you got to do is look at America versus Venezuela. Look at countries that were socialistic in a location of resources versus countries that were capitalistic. Look at the standard of living, look at all of the wealth produced, look at all of the average person's amount of money, and then let each individual make up their own decision based upon real world production. See, socialism in theory sounds good. Everybody is equal. No one is going to make more than anybody else. But whether it is Venezuela, whether it is Cuba, whether it is any type of country, even Chile, Chile was poor until they used Milton Friedman's economic ideology. Then they became really prosperous. Venezuela went from the richest country with the most oil in that area to the poorest. That's the problem in school. You just learn about theory. You don't learn about real world examples. You don't go out and run a business. You don't go out and work on a car. You're just sitting on your ass in a classroom learning about theories. These professors and teachers never do anything in the real world. They just sit on their ass. So theory is what their job is. They produce theory, they produce curriculum. They don't produce real goods and services in the marketplace. Since they are immune from this, a lot of them believe in socialism. Then you have college students and high school students who think socialism is the right way to go. They think they're intellectual because they can regurgitate what they learn in a textbook. But in the real world, when you have to be innovative, when you have to be quick on your feet, when you have to produce, they don't understand it. And then you have college graduates, no joke. I have a acquaintance, I like him personally, he's a nice guy, who has an engineering degree. And he literally doesn't understand why Jeff Bezos makes more than he does. Like, how can you have a college degree and not know why Jeff Bezos makes more than you, or Bill Gates, or Warren Buffett? I'm just perplexed. I'm just totally shocked and astonished when I hear him make a statement like that. But one more issue. We need to get our kids out of the schools. We need to make a mass exodus out of the schools. And when the teachers want to know why, tell them because we don't want our kids to grow up hating America and loving socialism. Maybe the teachers aren't personally bad people. Maybe they're well-meaning, but intentions don't mean anything. What matters is results, not what you intend to do. The curriculum ties a hand behind their back. If they're good teachers, making them have to teach the 1619 project. That's just how it is. So the solution, I always try to point out a solution or a possible solution, because I'm a solution-oriented thinker, is that you pull the kids out of the schools. Put them, I'm not saying you have to homeschool them if you're a busy parent, but put them in a private school where they are not learning the curriculum. Then the schools will be forced to change or die. Just like a business. If I'm selling something that nobody wants in the free market, I either have to innovate or I go under. And that is what the schools are going to have to do. Start teaching real shit or die. I mean, you make us go to these shitty ass classes and you're going to lie to us, indoctrinate us. Not only is it boring, but you're lying to me, or you're omitting things purposely to fit an agenda. Pull the kids out, folks. Pull them out of these schools. You can use the internet as a resource. You can use alternative media. There's many more resources than when I was a kid. I'm only 27. I'm not even 30. And there are hundreds and thousands of more resources you can use to educate your kids, rather than an archaic bullshit teacher who might be a nice person, but they're full of shit.